So I catch everything.
Who is in charge? Is there any one person in charge? What's dominating this? Is it external to the room? Is it internal to the room? Is it those two people? Are they in charge of their own destinies?
The sound guys. The sound guy's in charge. We see him present, and he can also get the people to change what they're doing. So we see that it's...
Is that a general feeling that people are being led by the sound? Yeah?
No, I don't think I was being led by...
Okay, cool. So they were making the changes, they were making their own choices.
That's what my attention on.
Did you feel that there was a world outside the room that they were in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, by the steps.
And what do you think that presence was? Did that come across to you as anything in particular?
It made them fearful, didn't it? Mm. They seemed to react negatively to the sound outside.
And what was going, were there sort of power relationship, was there a clear power relationship within the room? Was there one of those two characters who was in charge or leading? Okay. Cool. And do you think she was more in charge than presence outside the room? Okay.
I thought they were fighting for control. I didn't think either was in control.
Yeah, I agree. It just seemed to be a struggle between the two of them to control.
Okay.
But it felt like they were controlled by something outside that was like the power struggles that went on between them two were kind of within the constraints of this mysterious footstep that was going to potentially come in and do something horrible to them or control them in some way.
Who was that person? Did you get any sense of who that person was?
Because it's a museum, it could be one of the guys that work at the museum, and they're secret people, and they don't know about them, and they don't want people to know about them.
Yes, that's exactly what I felt, to be honest. Cool. So did anyone else get any sense of who that person was?
I thought that some of the sounds were that person, and that made me think that...
Beyond the footsteps that you heard?
That they were coming from a place that caused the performers to act in a certain way, that because they stopped and listened and responded, and that I read it as that they were trying to think about what that meant for them if somebody was going to come in, or if that told them what was going to happen next.
And what would have happened if somebody had come in?
I thought the same as you said, that like the curator might discover them doing something they shouldn't do.
Did you think that presence outside the room knew about those people, knew about those figures or not?
No, but it was just like one of the workers that was coming down.
So, but were they secret people, is what I'm saying?
Well,
or were they kind of exhibition people?
The people that work at the museum.
Okay.
You need to be quiet, you need it feel like
Were we there?
Yeah.
No.
So yes and no, that's good.
I thought they were showing off to us at one point.
They were.
When they were over there, it seemed like they were competing for our attention.
I didn't exactly feel like we were there, but I really felt a shared, what's that word? When you are like a conspirator. So we were like almost in on it, but maybe not physically.
Okay, so what are we in this situation if we're there?
Is that something to do with just that we've all been in that situation? I mean, you could read it as a curator and two people doing something they're not supposed to be doing. But it could be a parental thing, and they're like two kids not doing something they're not supposed to be doing. It could be a workplace playing behind the boss's back. We've all had that experience.
Absolutely, but that's that person. Then how do we sit in relation to these naughty children, these bad employees, these...
I feel like we're still wrapped up in our fragile times.
somebody was watching them that wasn't a threat, like the noises, that there might have been, I don't know, like as if somebody might be looking through a two-way mirror, kind of, that they don't know who we are or what we are, but there's the potential for somebody to be looking.
Okay. And how did the sound, as opposed to the actor's performance or the sort of staging, how did that affect how you saw or what you saw? Or did it? That was a very leading question. Did it affect what you saw?
I think the relationship between the actors and the sound was a little bit like the relationship between the two actors. So on occasion one of them took the lead and on occasion the other did. It was the power shifting between the two actors, and then it was a similar sort of relationship with the music. Sometimes the music led them, and sometimes as their struggles increased, the tempo of the music grew. So they were both led by the music as well as the music followed what they were doing on stage. So it's a bit like one thing following the other, and that was happening in both senses, between the actors as well as the actors and the music.
And did it feel like a benign place or a threatening place?
Threatening, and that big noise that got louder and louder and louder and stopped. It's pretty threatening.
There's so much of themes around constraints as well, and people like being trapped and constrained in layers and layers, so they couldn't be their real selves, that it felt too much like that to be benign to me.
Okay. What questions are you going to leave this room with?
What were they?
What were they? Okay.
I'm not clear about whether I'm seeing something that's happening in the now, or I'm seeing the creation of the stories of those two characters. And I think that if it's the latter, then are we being told a story by them, as opposed to witnessing something that they're engaged in at the moment?
Okay. What do people feel about that? Is it happening now, or is it a recreation of something that's happening?
Felt pretty present to me. Didn't feel like it was a recreation at all.
But it's quite heavily punctuated, which is why it's quite broken up. It's quite chopped and sliced. That's why it felt like it was a memory almost, rather than a present thing.
And I think the kind of presenting to people seems a bit more like a memory, or like something they're trying to recreate that they've done before, like putting the 1, 2 and all this down, but then the playing and the power struggle seems very present between the two of them.
I thought it was now that it could be a repeated experience. Like, you know, if it's in a museum, somebody comes up in the morning and then repackages them, and then it all happens again. They come in the morning and go.
Is that a general feeling? What is going to happen tomorrow?
Not sure it matters though.
Does it matter?
Depends how it finishes.
Yeah.
How does it finish?
Yes, at some point the steps have to come in the door.
Yeah.
So does it have to finish with an entrance?
I think that the thing about the steps and the resetting or anything is that when they put the numbers down, it doesn't feel like there's any apology for that. When they hear the steps coming, they're not hiding the mess they've made. In fact, they're quite proud of the new objects for the exhibition, or it's almost like the little stories, the memory of that thing happening has now got a number, it's an occurrence or it's happened. So it feels like, it doesn't feel like it will reset, it feels like the numbers will grow and the things will grow. And the relationship with the sound is also interesting in that the second time they came around and did the makeup, the soundtrack, for me, suddenly it sort of, the whole moment sort of tripled in size, because I realised that the sounds we were hearing was the action, but from a time before. And even though we'd witnessed that, I thought, I wonder how many times we could do it and how much that sound would build up, and also how many times they've done it before. So it didn't ever feel like it would reset to point one. For me, it felt like it would grow. There was never any apology. It felt quite a deliberate decision to be proud and a responsibility for marking each moment.
So is there ever an end to this, or will it go on continuously?
I hope it goes on continuously, because I loved how they created something and put this label in front and made this piece that they created now a piece that people are going to look into the past when looking at. So I kind of liked the relation of the now and what's becoming then an object in a museum for other people who haven't been there, look at the story that isn't told as vividly as it was in that moment when they did history, kind of thing.
I think that's a really interesting point, because I was seeing the classification of those moments as they put the numbers down in a reconstructive way, like they were reconstructing an event and telling a story and reenacting a memory that you might feel in a museum context, and actually that has a kind of a bit of a more a greater weight of meaning, in that they're creating artifacts as they go along, and they're turning those things that happen in the now into artifacts to be viewed.
And it's quite nice, because what's meaningless in the moment, like a pile of paper, might be really meaningful to someone else at a different time.
Which is interesting, because one of the things we were talking about yesterday, we were talking about how we might frame the conversation was about how we'll end.
I didn't actually realise it was numbers, by the way. I was really curious about what those little objects were. I can't see.
When you came in, we looked around at exhibits, so we knew there was a little number there.
Yeah. But even now, I can't actually see the number. It's taken about my vision. But, but I thought they were kind of mysterious objects. I mean, when she was pushing the number around and he appeared to be following the movement, or moving as a result of her moving that, I thought they were just, I don't know, maybe rings or some sort of a symbol, rather than a number that would indicate it was different perception.
As well as the end, the beginning's quite interesting. Like, how did they get there in the first place? Because all the other exhibits they made between the two of them, but that first one they couldn't possibly have done just the two of them. So, you know, where's the third person who wrapped them up? Is that the footsteps, or is it somebody else?
Which, once you think about it, kind of asks a question about the relationship between outside and inside, doesn't it? And constraint and control outside and inside the room again. There are a lot more questions on your programmes, and there are also sort of contact details of the company. One of the things that we were talking about is that quite often, whilst it's useful to have a conversation in the moment, because that will bring up things that are important in the moment, both the action of having to think in a kind of different way to write something down, but also giving yourself some time to kind of let things drop, that they're also kind of valid, and we guess we'll get kind of different responses from you from that. So one of the reasons we choose companies is their openness to your input. And one of the reasons that we do things the way we do is that we collectively believe that the input of an audience and people who've seen work in its development is really, really important. So please do take the time, if you can, to have a beer downstairs and write any thoughts either now or later, and please feel free to get in contact with the company via email and give them some sort of more developed thoughts that aren't framed by the questions I'm asking you. Thanks ever so much for that. Thanks very much for the company. Cheers. Thank you.
We've actually got postcards with our address and stamps on, so that a few days down the line, when you've had a chance to reflect and maybe align some of the things in the space with the things in your personal life, and maybe just pick up on any other kind of imagery or sensations or associations, you might like to pop them on a postcard and send them back to us. We'd really like to hear from you. So if you'd like to do that, grab one of us with the postcards and we'll give you one. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Fiona.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you.